This time we begin our February 3rd afternoon meeting. It's time I recognize Mr. Perry.
Thank you, sir. Mayor and members of City Council. The first item on your strategic session agenda is the proposed fixed dollar lump sum bonus for eligible city employees. I'm proposing a one-time lump sum payment targeting our employees that won't see any other adjustment during the year, during this fiscal year. The lump sum has three categories. For full-time employees, it would be approximately $1,300. Part-time employees with 30 hours or more, $975. And part-time employees with 20 hours or more, $650. This positively affects our more junior staff by using a fixed dollar amount as opposed to a percentage. If you use a percentage, for example, those folks at the higher income range would see a larger adjustment in actual dollars. Some employees are being excluded from this, and those that are being excluded would be those that would see some kind of adjustment during the year, or would reasonably expect to see some other kind of adjustment, namely a probation, end of probationary adjustment, or a promotion-based salary adjustment. There is ample unrestricted funds in fund balance to accommodate this recommendation, and I submit that if this is approved, it recognizes our staff's performance and makes an effort to offset some of the lost purchasing power that's occurred through a lack of more systematic recognition. If you're inclined to approve this, I would request that you allow us to sequence it for your next regular meeting, not this afternoon or evenings, but the one occurring on the third Tuesday of the month. And that will allow us to develop a budget amendment and accompany the staff report.
Do you need a motion to move it forward, or you just want consensus?
I would like to comment on that.
Billy, go ahead.
Let them go ahead.
Okay.
I've been doing I didn't know this was coming up, but what I'd like to consider is not a bonus, but a salary increase, not senior management, but staff underneath, up to 3%. Because a bonus is only a one-time guarantee to these employees, where a salary increase is something they can count on, not this year, but next year too. And I think in trying to raise a family, run a household, you've got to have some kind of continuity with it. So that would be my comment.
I was interested in a couple of things. Apparently this is something that you're trying to do prior to any other discussions about fiscal year budget, the 2016 fiscal year budget. And we've had the employee benefits committee meeting, and we know that there may be some implications on our budget coming out of the whatever decisions we make with regard to employee benefits, and that's one concern I have. So I'm interested to know how the employees are going to be treated with regard to their health insurance premiums and that type of thing, and their coverages, before we move forward with something like this. And the other question I have is, how much money are you talking about here?
$500,000.
I have a question. Okay.
Question on what's the dollars required to fund this?
Yes.
It's roughly $500,000. It's on page 2 of the agenda. I'm sorry, it's close to 600,000.
Okay.
600,000.
My concern, and I'd love to see us give a 3% increase, but I also know that we're going to be facing a lot of difficulties in the next budget year. So I think this is just a measure to say thank you for your work. I don't have a problem with the bonus. I do think that next year we're going to be facing a lot of issues. I'd love to give employees a 3% cost of living increase, but I'm not sure that we're going to be able to do that and take care of all the needs that go on in the city. So that's my only comment.
What do we have any idea what it would cost to do the 3% raise for the group that Lynn is talking about?
Total total cost would be approximately 900,000 for cutting across all funds. Now that's 3% of payroll. I don't know that that would actually result in 3%
But that's
per
not,
employee, but
that's not what he has suggested.
Now, that's just from staff there,
yes,
not senior management.
Not department heads, he said.
we've not done an analysis. We can determine it.
If we
I
could
didn't walk in
determine
here with
what
that.
if we could determine what that would be, I'd be interested in taking a look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, can I clarify one thing? I
Sure.
apologize for being late. Item 1 here on the agenda, is that for the 2015-16 budget?
Current fiscal year, yes, sir.
Yes.
Well, that's
No, no,
14,
no.
15.
Current fiscal year is 14-15.
For the current-
Right now.
For right now.
Is that what you're saying?
It's for the current fiscal year.
Right, okay. And the second item on the agenda is for preparing and talking about the budget for 15-16. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Right, okay.
So you're talking about the,
So you're really looking at two different things here in a lot of ways, and,
Currently, I'm talking about an action for this fiscal year. That's all that's
you're
all
talking
I'm
about the bonus for the fiscal year. Lynn, are you talking about starting the 3% immediately, or are you talking about 2016?
I'm
The
talking
budget year.
about 2016.
Okay, what he's after is for right now, the bonus.
But I think, the bonus is good, but it only it doesn't allow them to spend money knowing they're gonna have a salary.
It's a one-time
to keep
thing.
it up. So that's the reason I like the salary increase more, because the fact that next year they can still count on this to pay bills with, where right now we only guaranteeing them one-time shot. If that's, I'd rather see it be more on the physical, long range, because I think our staff does a hell of a job, and really and truly for the last several years, we barely gave them any raises or anything. And, if we're gonna get out of our crunch and we're gonna make the things happen in the city that we want, it's gonna be done by these folks. And, so that's with my.
So you're wanting to take this bonus and put it with next year to make it 3%?
Mhm.
Perhaps it's a good idea.
I thought right now we were working on the budget to trying to get through this 8.8 million we've lost. And if the funds are in any way available, then I was figuring this would be starting in July 1. That was my comment. I might have misunderstood.
Yeah. But what you're saying, Larry, is we have the money right now in the fund balance, right? To do the one-time bonus, but you're not sure what projections for the budget year will be next year.
That's
Right?
accurate.
Because we're actually talking about that now.
That's accurate.
So you're trying to give some relief to the employees right now.
That's accurate.
Okay, that's what I
Right.
thought.
To add to that, this notion that's being presented today is something that's at my level and amongst some key staff began to coalesce it as an idea in the fall. We lost traction, and in part holidays and some other things. My hope had been that it would have been introduced in December, well, it's February, so obviously we didn't make that benchmark. So I'm interested in doing something now to recognize our staff.
What did
I don't have the insight to say that we can fund it in fact for next fiscal year. So
So
I'm
we're
not
basically-
prepared to present that, although I think everyone in the room and staff likes that as an idea. As you'll see in the slide presentation, conversation that we'll be carrying on for next fiscal year planning, that is an interest. It is a concern in terms of competitively paying or compensating our employees. But I see it more broadly than salaries. I see it as salary and benefits to answer in part Councilman Jordan's concern about benefits and what may be happening with that. So I see it combined. Today, what I'm presenting to you is the idea of a bonus, fixed dollar, now.
Yeah,
What,
I don't have a problem with it now that we have to look to the future, so.
I do have a problem with
Yeah.
it now. I've been looking at it as a part of my overall plan for the upcoming year. How much money do our employees normally get for their Christmas bonus?
I don't have
It's
that
a
number.
week's pay.
1 week's
Right.
salary.
Yeah, it's a week's salary.
1 week's salary. Okay. And we've been giving that to them consistently now for,
1967.
so, and that represents, and that comes every year. And,
Yes.
and it is basically a bonus.
Yes.
Okay. So they know that we try. Yeah.
Yes, that Christmas bonus is very important to the staff.
It really is, yeah.
What dollar amount does that usually end up being, the total dollar amount?
I don't have that figure with me right now. But you know,
It equals out to about 1 week of their,
It's
there's a
1 week.
percentage they do
Talking about
it
total
on.
dollar
yeah,
amount.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know the
Just
total dollar
percentage.
amount that costs the city offhand though.
I'm interested in knowing what that total dollar amount is and see how it compares with this $600,000 that we're proposing to do right now.
We can provide that.
Personally, I just think this is a good conversation, and personally, I see it as a beginning conversation to be included as a long-range plan. Unlike Councilman Kazai, when you're looking at the amount of monies that we're looking at having to replace in our budget because of nothing that we've done, but because of what the state has done, because of what county commissioners have done, and what the evaluation is going to do. We have to make a decision right now to spend $600,000. It could really hurt us as we move forward, long range, for the upcoming budget that we're trying to put together. So I'm just trying to, I would rather look at everything as a part of the overall, and that's just me. And
Larry,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
have you looked at all that already? Of the overall picture and just, I know you were doing the one-time thing.
Our evaluation is based on the current budget, current
And the money.
operating characteristics, and current fund balance.
Okay,
We have yet to begin meeting with individual departments in planning of next year. That will begin shortly. The requests, the decision packages, as we call them, are coming in, and so on and so forth. So I don't have a picture yet of next fiscal year.
$600,000 cash is an awful lot of
About
money
2 cents.
for about just
about 2 cents on the.
about 2 cents on the tax rate. So, you know, that represents an awful lot of money for us to make up if later on we get to a position and we determine that that's money that we wish we had to help, you know, or put together an upcoming fiscal budget.
I understand that, and what I'm asking the board to consider is showing commitment to invest in the staff today.
I guess I'm very much on board to invest in our staff. In fact, your second part, discussion for council goals and objectives, I guess my number one objective would be to reward our employees. But I still, if you give me a bonus of $1,500, I can go out and spend it, but can I really plan on anything, because I'm not going to have it the next year? If you ask me, my number one goal right now would be to put our staff first, and anything else we do other than providing the services we provide now second. So I just like guaranteeing our staff that they're going to have that money this year, next year, and next year, rather than just a one-time pop. That's just my personal opinion.
It sounds to me like what Mr. Jordan and Mr. Desire, I'm not polling the people on the council about it, but it seems to me like what they're proposing is we haven't really given a cost of living raise in some time. 600,000 could be used to begin that thought and would give us something to use for that in the 2015-16 budget, which would also give us 3 months to discuss it and cuss it and see if it's where we want to go. And it seems to me to be a more practical, frugal, thoughtful plan than approval of a bonus today and assurance nothing tomorrow. Personally, that's the way I feel.
Okay, when was the last time we gave a cost of living, do you know?
We gave a COLA in fiscal year 11-12 at 3.9%, and we did a merit that averaged 2.5% in 13-14.
Well, merit's a little bit different than COLA.
Yeah.
So,
Lynn and someone was talking about, you know, something permanent, not just something today. Nothing. If you got $600,000 to spend, I'm gonna throw this out, I don't know. If you got $600,000 and you wanna make it permanent, what kind of percentage would it give the employee? He or she would get the bonus today, but he would get a percentage raise. It'd be here now and next year too. It wouldn't be hit today and gone tomorrow. So what would that be, a 1.5% or 2%, or what would it be to spend the $600,000?
in other words, go ahead and start it now.
Well, I'm just throwing that out for discussion. I understand what Lynn is saying, and, you know, that's another way I was looking at it, you know. You get it today, you got it next time too, but you may not get 3%, you might get 1.5 or 2%. But I'd rather have that forever than,
You have the 3 will be
Just for today.
built in for each budget year.
I'm just looking at, yeah, well, that's true, you gotta,
You gotta calculate
you
that in
gotta,
every budget year.
that's for now and evermore.
Mhm.
So, I'm sorry, your question, sir?
I'm thinking,
And this is probably nothing that you're gonna be able to just calculate off the top of your head, I don't know, but the question is, you know, if you were to use that $600,000 figure, what would that equate to percentage-wise to the employee in the form of a raise?
2%.
2%?
Yes.
Yeah, well, 2% in my mind is a good damn raise rather than a 3.9% bonus. If you polled our employees today, I believe that you would find the vast majority of them would rather have a smaller raise and no bonus. In my mind, I just can't help but believe that. It's the single biggest thing. It was like Lynn said.
If you're asking me,
Yeah,
as
well,
an
we're
employee,
not asking you at your rate. I'm talking about the employees of this city, who most of them make, let's just say, in the $30,000 to $60,000 range.
bird in
That's-
hand is better than two in the bush.
Yeah.
If you're asking me, would city staff like some monetary gain today versus July 1st, a hope and a prayer that July 1st there'll be something, I think most would say today.
Yeah, I get that, I get that, don't get me wrong, but that's not what I said.
My proposal is today.
I know what your proposal is, I see it right here, and I know what it's for. I'm not saying that, all I'm saying is, I'm not sure that's something I agree with. I think we need to be looking at something a little more longer term, more permanent thing. You know, give a man.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
But-
And I'm, as the slides will show you, I'm committed.
No, we didn't
I'm
say slides,
expressing
we
those
come back
points,
to discussions.
but we don't, we're at the beginning of.
you hadn't put it together, we don't know what July holds, that's what you're
Well,
saying.
We tabled it, do we have
To
more?
be more sincere, what trade-off? One of my top objectives is going to be investing in staff. I don't know what I've got to but be prepared to recommend to you as sacrificing to get to
Because it's
that
going to be
point.
a sacrifice in the next
And
budget year.
what does that mean? What do I have to what do I have to be comfortable proposing to sacrifice?
Well, I agree
I
with
can't tell you
Saluda.
that.
Why don't we wait and find out what we got going on? Why don't we go to the next item, see what we've got, the money that we got to work with, and then we
Then
can come
have
back
a
and talk
discussion.
about it.
Yeah.
Maybe we
Why
have
don't
a
we do
motion
that?
to
I'll
table
second it.
this until.
Until
I have a motion to table it.
I'll second.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear it. I have a motion to table it. Have a second, all in favor of the table? I oppose.
One question. Are we going to talk about this after we see the slide, or are we going to table it to another meeting?
Perhaps take it to another meeting to have a chance to explore.
I don't think the staff has got all the information that they need to provide them, because I don't think they have the answers to Lynn's question. Also, Lynn has said, not necessarily the senior staff, and I don't know if we can differentiate who we give raises to or not. I think that's a subject that may have come up before.
I think if you do cost of living, it has to be.
So I'm not, if we give it to someone, we may have to give it to everybody. But I think that's information that we need for the staff to provide us with as well.
You're probably safe, not that I have my JD degree, but you're probably safe if you focus on a fixed dollar amount as opposed to a fixed percent. And the way that works is it will appear larger at the lower economic range than it is the higher. So whether it's
That's why-
1,300 or 1,500 or 2,000, the only examples I built into the staff report were going up to 60,000 at the $1,300 range, at as a fixed dollar amount at $30,000 level. It's approximately 4%. At the $60,000 level, it's half that. Just as
I can understand that if we're talking about a fix, not a bonus. I understand what you're saying. If you
But we
give,
can make it, if the interest of the board was to make it reoccurring, it could be at a fixed dollar amount.
how can you do it
I
where,
believe.
how can you do it where the, basically everybody pretty much gets the same thing?
But specifying it as dollars as opposed to a percent. If we just give it across the board, or across the board, $1,300 or whatever number, and
It's all the same percentage.
no, it's a different percent, it's different.
Because higher
But it's
salary,
fixed
less-
same dollars.
Yeah.
So-
The ones on the lower would get a higher
Percent.
percentage.
Percent.
I can buy
Is
that.
that what I just said? Higher
I'm
percent.
sorry, I heard percent.
He just, terminology changed, that was it. Velocity's the same.
That's right.
Call it quick.
Same amount of money.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, it's table. Let me ask you,
This gets some fun.
when do we want this to come back up now?
When's our next strategic plan?
March 3rd.
Would the staff have an opportunity by then to, are we having any other budget meetings between now and then?
No, sir.
Okay.
If it's the interest of the board, we can certainly put this on an earlier agenda and invite you in earlier for your third Tuesday meeting, say half an hour or 45 minutes.
I think we need to do it, as soon as we can. If I was an employee, I wouldn't want this thing put off any longer. But,
Yeah.
if we're gonna do it, I think we need to go ahead and move on. That's my opinion now.
Let's just do it at the next meeting.
Let's do it at the next meeting.
Next
It's
meeting.
not like we got so much on the agenda, we
Yeah.
can't talk about it at the next meeting.
Next meeting, okay with everybody?
Mhm.
Okay, next meeting. Very good.
All right, super.
We'll move on to item 2.
Thank you, Mayor and members of City Council. Perhaps as others have attempted in the past through council budget workshops and sessions, I'm interested in building a foundation of insight and awareness amongst the board for the city's fiscal environment, to include our capital plan, and I say that in the broadest of terms. Community and industrial investment and employee investment. I'm asking you to focus on policy level concepts and discussions, and to allow the staff and I to develop strategies that attempt to meet your objectives. That in a nutshell is why I place so much importance on the retreat in terms of initiating a strategic or long-term planning effort. But it's more than just one day that I asked y'all to set aside for a retreat. I believe we must begin cultivating an environment that looks beyond next year or the year after. Although perhaps more pronounced this year, every fiscal year organizations struggle with a scarce resource environment and trying to meet the requirements that are being forecasted. My objective today is and in the sessions that follow, are to group if you are so inclined as a group, is to navigate to a consensus on long-term objectives and near-term spending priorities. And I hope to do that in a manner that it will sustain, if not improve, our quality of life. But again, emphasis is, I think we need to look beyond next year or the year after. With that, I'd like to highlight the topics that we're going to discuss this afternoon. The first, I've asked Lisa Strickland to provide insights on our fiscal environment, after which my desire is for exploring that backdrop as a basis for goal setting and forming consensus on spending priorities. I'll provide some insights from a staff brainstorming session pertaining to impacts and concerns, and I'll attempt to summarize imperatives and supporting actions from your recent retreat. Lastly, I'll close with a request for your guidance or decisions on topics for our workshop series, possible study areas, and an indication of your preliminary priorities. However, I don't want to rush the latter. I hope the board will remain open-minded to hearing from staff on a variety of themes and topics. With your indulgence, I'd like to invite Lisa to share her fiscal insights.
Good afternoon. Some of these slides are familiar ones that we've seen over the past couple of years. Just a reminder to kind of get us in the right frame of mind. The total annual budget for the city of Monroe is over $149 million. That's a lot of money. The electric fund is our largest fund, and the general fund follows in second. The general fund is mostly the focus. It's the hardest fund to try to balance. The budget for this current year is $33,753,000. And as you can see by the pie chart, police and fire make up about half of the total expenditures for the general fund. Revenue for the general fund is mostly ad valorem taxes. Behind that, sales taxes. A lot of these are ever-changing, and we'll get on to talk about that in some upcoming slides.
Back to that, Lisa, 1 minute. Other taxes and license, that 3%, is that the privilege license taxes there?
It is.
Yeah.
It's not going to be there next
Right,
year.
yeah, well, I understand it, yeah.
Inflation. Over the past 3 years, the average annual inflation has been about 1.8%. This affects the cost of goods, such as the cleaning products that we have to buy through the contract that we have to provide that service to all of our facilities, or just services that in general continue to escalate because other people need to cover their costs. This is based on the Consumer Rate Index. That is just one of the many weaknesses that we have at the city. On the bottom, I'll start there first. This year, we're looking at the revaluation. I'm going to talk about that in more detail later on as well. But we have other increased costs such as medical care, political risks with loss of revenues due to changes at the state level. We have limited growth in Monroe. We have maintenance costs in our parks, facilities, streets, sidewalks. And in order to mitigate these expenses, we've faced possible reduced services, or we have to increase future costs to make up the difference. We do have some good things going for us, though, so it's not all terrible. We have some great long-term planning and action plans for our utilities. The operations are sound, and we have capacity for additional customers, and we have accredited public safety operations. We have good credit ratings. This gives the city the ability to borrow at more favorable interest rates. And we just had a credit review by S&P, and I found out Friday that they did affirm our A+ rate for the combined enterprise fund debt. So that's great news. I was glad they have a very stable outlook for the city of The budget metric slide, I'm sure this is a familiar one. 1 cent of tax rate is currently $368,914.
It's gone up a little bit then.
Yeah, it
Three
has.
ninety-two, 327.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's gone up. In order to generate $1 million of new taxable value, in order to generate revenue of $5,550, we need $1 million of new taxable value added somewhere in our community. In order to generate $100,000 in revenue, we need to add $18 million worth of value in our community. What this means for our expenses, down on the bottom, if we increase spending by $100,000, we need to do one of two things. Either increase the property tax rate by 0.271 cents, or we need to add taxable value of $18 million somewhere in our community, residential, commercial. There were some examples that we had on there if we wanted to afford a COLA or a merit, some amounts that it might cost to raise taxes to be able to afford that, or taxable value that would need to be added to Monroe to be able to afford that. We do have a good unassigned fund balance. I wanted to give a little history here. At the end of FY14, we had an increase to the unassigned fund balance of $4,448,000. It's primarily due to, well, it is due to increased revenues and expenditure budget savings. The biggest culprits there, property taxes for vehicles. It's really coming in strong. The state program is working well. And we had a little bit of a windfall there because of the transition from the county to the state. There was a 3-month overlap, so we actually got 3 months worth of extra revenue last year. Sales tax continued to be higher than anticipated, so that's very promising. We're excited about that. Budget savings, we saw some salary savings and operating line savings.
Listen, let me ask a question before I get too far, I don't mean to interrupt.
No,
Talk about the
please.
sales tax. Are we gonna get more sales tax than they predicting, or are we gonna be same or less on account of the county raising their property tax? See, I understand when they raise their property tax, that works into our sales tax all over.
It
Well, now,
does.
they're saying throughout the state, the sales tax is much better.
It is.
So now, do you know yet, have you got any kind of,
She has a slide.
I
that
do.
will
I
show.
have
Oh,
a
you're
slide
coming to that.
upcoming, and
Beg your pardon.
I'll get onto that in just a
all
few
right, sorry
minutes.
about that.
No problem. We also had some savings, some incentive grants that went unclaimed, and then we had some redesign or design changes, I guess I should say, in Fire Station number 4 that delayed the project. So we had some debt service savings that we were able to plunk into fund balance. With all of these increases and the activity to date, the fund balance undesignated amount is at $5,378,772. This is a great source of funding for one-time items such as capital projects, capital equipment. We can introduce some programs or add to the programs that we already have that will reduce operating costs in future years. Can use it to offset the costs of deferred maintenance. We just need to be careful that any items funded from fund balance should not increase operating costs in a future year unless we designate an additional revenue source to offset that increased expense. Here's what you've all been waiting for.
Okay, we'll be good.
Oh,
And Lisa, will you give us a copy of this one else over so we can look at it also?
yes,
Okay.
We can provide all the slides.
Yeah, present them.
I have a paper copy.
Well,
Oh, did she make it bigger? I don't know how to make it bigger, I'm sorry.
She didn't make it up.
We can email these out to you. I think we're just coming out to you now.
The legislature is also talking about revamping this sales tax.
Yeah, they are.
So, I mean, I don't know what that's gonna do to us or either individual city. But if they revamp this sales tax, I'm not sure, I feel like we're gonna get less.
I start saying,
I don't know.
We can email
Hard
this
to
out.
say.
Yeah.
yeah, this is a little bit small here.
Yeah, it's all a little bit small, sorry.
If they remap it, they talk about giving some of the
Can't see this.
poor counties across the state, let them cut in on some of the larger cities' taxes, and therefore, somebody's gonna get less tax money.
Hope and pray it's the larger city.
I hate to tell you, it's not
Poor
there.
little Monroe might get a tad more.
Well,
Wouldn't that be nice?
That ain't, they talk about the counties down east, mostly the counties down east.
Really small
Bruce is
population.
gonna offer us a little bit of assistance here.
They're saying their share is not right.
Yeah, I start saying.
Advance the slides. Go back, go back. Back. Okay.
Can you shift it?
Yeah, that's what I was afraid. Well, anyway, the first, what the slide is meant to depict is where we're at in FY15. If we expect those projected excess revenues to be sustainable in future years, and then the effect on FY16. Very first item to note is ad valorem taxes. I'm showing no change there. There will be no change in the budget next year as long as we adopt the revenue neutral rate. As you know, we're in a revaluation year this year. I spoke with the county last week and have got some not so promising feedback. So far, they've worked through the residential assessments, and across the county, they're anticipating a 7% decrease in values. For Monroe, it's a little bit higher. They're anticipating about 10%.
We have older housing stock.
And that the lowest value housing stock, under 100,000, are the homes that they're most concerned about. From random sales data, what they're seeing is the value in these homes is decreasing by as much as 40 to 50%.
Yeah.
So it's going to affect us unless we adjust our tax rate. They're still working through all of the commercial valuation. The commercial data will not be available until mid to late February. It'll have to be done by March 13th, though. That is the date that they have targeted to send out notices with everybody's new values to the community.
So commercial saves us now.
We've done some preliminary calculations based on a 10% decrease in value, and that would require an adjustment to our tax rate of 6 cents. Yeah. Going on down the list.
Wow, you're full of good news.
I know, I'm sorry.
Here.
It doesn't get much better, though. Going down the list, the next big item on there is the privilege licenses. The hit to us is about $860,000. That's a big, big decrease in revenue. There's nothing to replace it, nothing that the state has announced at this time. There's talk about, a replacement, but there's nothing that they've come up with a definitive plan about. The next item, the sales tax. Mayor, this is the one you had a question about, and Billy, I think I gave you some bad information last week. The effect of this will be in FY16 due to the increase in the tax rate at the county. We lose 0.6% of our piece of the pie of the overall distribution. What that equated to year over year, we just estimated at $333,000. So we're projecting an excess of this year, $336,000, pretty much negates that increase in revenue that we're seeing. It won't be sustainable because next year we'll get a smaller piece of the distribution. If we increase our tax rate, we figured out a 1 cent increase can gain us back about $67,000, based on an average collection amount. Of course, if it's more, the increase would be more or less. The next item up there is the utility and telecommunications sales tax revenues. We are seeing good collections in there. It's pretty positive. This is the first year under the new sales tax method. In the prior years, it's all been the franchise fee tax that went away. We're collecting it as sales tax now. So we're hoping that that will be a sustainable revenue level for us at that increased amount. With that being said, when you total up the increases and the hit that we're taking from privilege license, if we keep a revenue neutral rate, we're starting off next year with a shortfall of about $500,000 in revenues year over year. It would cost us 1.4 cents to make up this shortfall in tax rate. So, and that would be in addition to the adjustment for the revenue neutral rate.
Revenue neutral rate is the value, or is it depends on what the
Depends on what the evaluations come back at. The worst case that we've come up with is about 6 cents.
Well, I hope the
So we could
government,
go down to 49 cents revenue neutral.
I hope the government come through
Right,
with
we did.
this tax stuff.
Other way.
I'll go
Other
up.
way.
Okay, because I was thinking that they use the revenue neutral based on the county's tax. It equals out.
It'll be based on what our new assessed value is.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah,
it'll be
we get that
whatever
from
we
the
need to
county.
generate the same amount of revenue.
Well, hopefully hopefully Pat McCoy, the governor, will give these cities some of this money back that he's promising, where they take these sales, not sales tax, but the privilege license tax. Now, if he comes through with that, that will help us out. This won't wipe us out clean by no means. But it'll be a help, and I hope he'll come through with that. He said,
I wouldn't count on any of it.
I wouldn't either.
well, I'm not counting on it, but he keeps saying, I'm gonna do this. He's gonna have some mud in his face if he don't do something, because he's got mighty public with it.
And
The
the
shop
speaker
lost
is very-
33 million on this business tax, property license.
18, I thought.
18?
They lost a lot.
They lost 18, Greensboro about 3 million, Raleigh about 7.
Hey, this is encouraging to me to know that we might be, even at this, just that $500,000
Yeah, that's a lot better than
shortfall. That's a lot better
Yeah.
than I would have even thought, so it's not all doom and gloom, is it? You know,
I would like to emphasize that roughly when I walked in the door, the redneck math was 1.5 plus,
Yeah.
1.5 million plus. We were looking at a shortfall. I want to emphasize shortfall really more precisely is the loss of revenues. The other side of the coin is expenses, and we don't, those numbers haven't come in. We haven't assimilated those numbers. Our current budget probably has a number of things that are non-recurring. So it's not, what we've asked Lisa to do is give you a picture of, from a revenue standpoint, what does it look like? And the projection is, or the forecast is, a $500,000 decrease in revenue. The wild card is whether or not the board is willing to consider at least a revenue neutral tax rate.
What are you looking, basically, what are you looking at for revenue neutral, just curiosity wise? I think it's 6, that's what I thought. I was just making sure that I heard that correctly.
Yeah, that's the initial calculation at the 10%.
You're saying revenue neutral, meaning that
6 cents increase.
if we do have a property
Tax rate.
devaluation, we're still going to be keeping where we are dollar-wise? Is that what you're saying?
No, 6 cents tax increase.
6 cent crust, okay. I
Put you
knew
back
it was
where
coming
you're
there
at.
somewhere, but I don't know exactly how it came.
I would venture to call it an adjustment rather than an increase, because it's still,
Yeah, ask the citizens that.
yeah. Well, and next time I'll
But you
provide
know-
some data. If their value goes down and our rate goes up, what they end up paying should remain about the same, or
Right.
in some cases even less.
But if you're going to provide the services, if we don't stay revenue neutral, then some services are going to have to be chopped. So
Yep.
you're raising taxes
Yes.
only because of the fact that property values have gone down. And if we want the services, you got to be able to provide them. So you don't like to pay tax more than anybody else, but sometimes you got to do it.
And we've cut all we could cut except for services now. I mean, we did that
Mhm.
2-3 years ago. But you don't have a commercial Because commercial might help balance it out a little bit.
That's what the county is hoping as well, but they had no data. They had a snafu and they were a couple weeks behind in getting some of those values together. And they told us that they'd meet with us independently toward the end of February.
If they'd have had this reevaluation 2 years ago, it would have been bad. You know, they postponed that thing for a couple of years.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would have been much worse 2 years ago.
Of course,
We can
the
blame
county
it on
can
Larry.
catch up too.
I tried.
That's it for my presentation. I'll turn it back over to Larry.
Good job, Lucy.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it.
All right. What's being shown up there is trying to represent the results of a brainstorming session that key staff held on January 7th. The slide illustrates areas of interest and concern. I found probably 5 to 8 areas of overlap with between the staff's insights and council's feedback or insights from the retreat and the email survey that we received back from you all, identifying your priorities, which I'll highlight a couple slides from here. I denoted the overlap in views with a Y, and it may be hard to see on that screen, but the green Y squiggly thing on the left side and the left margin in each sections. And I'll highlight a couple of these. The first, staff feels a growing gap between capability versus expectations for services, which may be most pronounced as staff feeling perhaps unable to be as responsive as maybe they were in the past or they should be, and using deteriorating or inadequate facilities. Second area, sustainability of our quality of life is more difficult as costs increase and tax revenues are stagnant from the general fund. Third, part of the reason the tax base is flat is housing stock is not improving appreciably. There's limited availability across middle income ranges, and there's scarce quality affordable housing as well. Possible fourth area of overlap is turnover in staff through retirements and non-competitive wages and benefits. Each of these are growing concerns of our professional staff. Also, before I move on, are there any questions on what you see up there? Also, the brainstorming session, staff identified areas of significance. I again looked for areas of overlap with council's perspectives and found 2, and again they're noted with the green Y. Going into a little more depth than what's shown on the screen there. I think the first, in a growing city, I think that's an idea that encompasses many different efforts. Code enforcement, retail development, open space improvements, better transportation networks, working on our appearance, maintaining or enhancing our capital plan. And again, I mean that in a broad sense, not in the perhaps the classic sense. Nurturing an environment to attract private investment in housing, retail, and industry, which I believe would improve the experience that our citizens have in our community, or could have, and rallying around those big ideas that could add dimension to our city. Second one, enhancing the redevelopment initiatives. I think this more directly focuses on fixing our development code, continuing our minimum housing enforcement, active demolition efforts, funding and executing our master plans, continuing to cultivate successful economic development initiatives, and additional emphasis leveraging our airport as a commercial and industrial development catalyst. And third, investing in our current staff. I mentioned earlier, I see compensation in a more broad term than perhaps typically salary or wages. I think it also includes benefits. And a lot of focus and interest on what we provide is medical insurance and the cost thereof. Absent our investment, I think over time our best and brightest are going to leave. And during the interim, quality will suffer. Right? Consequently, costs will increase, efficiency could erode as the organization handles turnover and reinvests itself or rediscovers itself. Fourth one, staffing needs and matching those to the desired service levels. And given that our population growth has been flat or stagnant, how has service quality changed? I think an example in a general sense is the filtering or migrating of federal and state mandates or required services down on the local level. That can add complexity to what we were doing yesterday. I mean that figuratively, yesterday, last month, last year, or years before. And we're adding additional layers to what we're already doing. Also, the interest of our citizens to receive higher quality services can place a greater demand on our staff, our processes, and our facilities. Each of those may not initially be obvious in creating needs for additional staff or for adding staff with greater skill sets in technically, educationally, or experience. Are there any questions on that slide? Shifting from staff perspectives, I've tried to summarize the insights from the retreat we was held as a side note, meeting our University of North Carolina facilitators expecting to publish a final report in the next week or so. This slide is a build slide. No, I didn't intentionally leave 3/4 of it blank. But I'd like to begin with the near term and then add material that transitions to the longer term. In regards to near term, an observation that board members had was that elections can have a significant impact on the direction this organization takes, as well as changes at the state level and federal level of governments in possibly in 2016. Nearer term, or I'm sorry, in intermediate term impacts, two common views shared between council and staff was the effect of deferred maintenance and a growing gap between capability of delivering services and citizens' appetite for those services. Moving more towards the longer term, perhaps three common views shared by staff was, with staff and council, was reducing blight, inadequate housing stock for mid-income levels and seniors, and the need for succession planning amongst our staff. I just tried to hit some of the broader areas. There's a lot of meat on this slide. We have to try to drill down further. Hopefully this is familiar information. These were ideas and thoughts that came up in the retreat. Another area of correlation between staff and council were on these three ongoing imperatives. Actions of the state legislature is eroding municipal authority. We've seen that legislative action in regards to affecting ETJ authority, less autonomy in developing development standards, loss of annexation, ouch, and now possibly reducing condemnation authority. Second one, detrimental changes in fiscal policy. We heard Lisa talk about privilege license, fee revenue being lost, possible changes in sales tax distribution formulas, and then lastly, migrating programs and services in the form of mandates to the local level. This slide illustrates actions that council members offered at the retreat to address the emerging vision we discussed on the previous few slides. One with a lot of interest was looking for ways to collaborate with the school system to improve the educational experience. Some areas that had correlation or agreement between staff and council included reviewing the PDO, and to that point, revision should support economic, retail, and housing development. Four members found that this was important. Another was continuing to advocate the benefits of Highway 74 bypass, and four found this to be important. And just as a point of clarification, the items on the left had greater agreement than the items on the right. This slide and the next slide summarize your priorities that you've responded to us through email traffic. And what I'm going to try to demonstrate on the slides following this in the next slide is where I thought there might be agreement amongst your top 3 priorities and where I thought there might be agreement amongst your top 5 priorities. This is my attempt to demonstrate possible areas of agreement and to encourage consensus around one or more large themes. I didn't see much consensus on the top 3 priorities until I grouped like ideas. And so in doing that, I tried to widen my peripheral vision beyond the top 3 to pool responses along similar interests or concepts. And what I saw was at the top of the page there, a coalescing of interests around the downtown, community development, and recreation. And there were 9 occurrences that had identified this theme. And to depart just for a moment, the different colors are an effort to show you my calculus and how I came up with 1, 2, and 3. So if you follow down the chart and follow where the green areas are, that's the math that adds up to the first, second, and third ranked items. Second one being economic development and airport. There were 6 occurrences which this was identified, and then also the police station was number 3. Obviously, it's been said before by wiser men and women that the devil's in the details. In terms of the specifics and what initiatives are weighted and within these broad theme areas represented by the first and second. Hence my interest that I stated in my opening remarks, that I want to raise our collective awareness of the environment through the next 2 or 3 sessions of workshops with a cross-section of briefings on themes. These are the topics, general topics that I'd like to encourage that we have several workshops on. Except for the first, the department SWOT presentation, which will involve key staff presenting department strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats as a foundation for understanding the department's fiscal realities. My intent is for you to hear their insights and for me to use the same briefing format for several community forums in April. The other 2 categories of topics group interests under either sustainability or growth strategies, and I don't really intend to debate whether this item or that item is more properly a growth strategy or a sustainability strategy. What I really would rather emphasize is we need to sustain what we're doing. I'd like to grow. And so there are 2 camps of strategies, if you will, that attack those different concepts. So if you're so inclined, I'd like to task staff to prepare and sequence these topics for our future sessions. I believe we can combine 2 or more to an afternoon session. And I would ask the board if there are themes or topics that I may have missed that are important to you for perspective on getting foundation. I'd like to know it. Are there other focus areas that you want brought to the forefront? Obviously, I don't have multiple years of institutional knowledge and memory, so as I plod through the department budget sessions, there'll be other ideas and topics that may manifest themselves that I think may be important for you to hear about. I'll evaluate that intensity and determine the degree that it cuts across our departments or funds and also across the community. And based on that, decide its relevance for a future workshop. In closing, I'm asking council for guidance. Do you support the notion that I've provided to array multiple topics for future sessions? The second question I would have, are there priorities that a majority wants addressed now? Or is the council comfortable allowing time to gather more insights on the environment and requirements?
More insight.
Are there things that I've missed? Are there other areas that you'd like us to take a look at that may not be adequately identified there? We'd be happy to, if it comes up later on, we'll be happy to.
Where's the golden goose? I hadn't seen it.
I'm working on my bag of fairy dust. That concludes my remarks, and I believe Lisa's. Open to your questions.
Okay. Council have any questions, any comments they want to?
I like the format you got lined up there. I think
I
that's,
think
this was
it-
important, and we'll wait on y'all for some answers.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, if not hearing any, I have a motion to
So
adjourn.
I'm gonna ask you
We adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn, have a second, all in favor?
now to.
We adjourn.